Okay, so I'm going to show you how I edit this image from start to finish. Basically, this is a raw image. It was shot at ISO 200 at 1/800th of a second with a 105 millimeter camera at 1.4. When you zoom into her, you can see that she's very sharp, but this eye is sharper than this eye because the depth of field is so shallow. There's a little bit of noise in this image. So one of the first things I will actually do is I like to go and just use I'm in Lightroom to remove the chromatic aberrations and enable the profile corrections. So that has already brightened up my whole image. I'm going to pull out some of the noise and just a little bit sharper, nothing crazy. We don't want it to be crazy because, oops, because we're going to go in and do some more editing, just get rid of some of that noise. Already it's nice and bright. I'm going to go back up here to maybe give it a little bit more warmth, a little bit of contrast, bring down the blacks just a little bit. That gives it a little bit more contrast again. I like to up the whites a little bit. I like to have a nice clean image when I start before I go into Photoshop. Up the vibrance a little bit. Her skin tone is fine for me. And so I'm going to leave it at that. I think it looks fine right now. Like I said, it's pretty pretty focused. This eye is definitely much sharper than this eye, but in the end, I really think that they're both acceptably sharp. Okay, now I'm going to go to Photo Edit in Adobe Photoshop. And it should actually just open up in Photoshop. There we go. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate my layer and take a quick look. You'll see that her skin, she doesn't have a lot of dark circles under her eyes because she's actually facing up towards the light, which is nice. I didn't use any external lighting here, and so sometimes this golden hour light is nice and soft, and then if you face your model towards the light and her chin is up slightly, we're able to reduce any kinds of shadows. If I want her to be more face on, she might have more shadows under her eyes, which you can reduce. Other than using just post-processing, you can also reduce it by using a reflector, which I had with me that day, or maybe some off-camera flash, like as a fill light. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to work on her skin tones. I'm going to use a frequency separation. This is an action that I downloaded from Phlearn, Phlearn. I'll put that into the comments. It's a free action. I highly suggest you watch the video on tutorial on how to use it. His free tutorial teaches you how to actually make the action, but then he also gives away the action for free. So I just use the action. So I'm going to click on that. Press continue. So now I like to look and see how much blur I'm going to need in my frequency separation. Usually I do it around 8 or 9 pixels. Press OK. Again, if you don't know how to use a frequency separation, Phlearn has a very nice tutorial that teaches you. But you can see how I'm doing it here. So basically, I'm going to go to the bottom layer. I'm going to go to my spot healing tool, keeping it nice and small. I'm keeping it at content aware, create texture, and I'm just going to take away the blemishes. Actually, I'm on the wrong layer. Sorry, going to the top layer. I don't know how many times I do that, but every time I do frequency separation, I always forget which layer to work on. But when you use this tool, if it doesn't work, you know you're on the wrong layer. And I'm just removing blemishes very slightly. And this is the layer. The top layer is one you use this tool with. I'm also going to try and remove little fine lines, and any extra hairs that I don't like. You're going to see me using actions in this video. I have a link to all the actions in the comments. They're the actions that I use on a regular basis. I find that actions are very helpful because they just allow you to do things that you could probably figure out how to do on your own if you have some Photoshop savvy. But it's just quick, much faster for me. But one thing I always say about actions is you really have to understand how to use them. You're not just going to buy them and they're going to be a one-shot deal. You're not going to just, you want to learn your tools like anything else. You want to learn your tools and when to apply them. And of course, experimenting is a big piece of it. So you're going to experiment with your tools and see what it works. And sometimes you're going to say, oh, maybe this action will work on this image. Nope, doesn't look so good on this image. And then you delete it. So that's one way of actually learning. So once you start to have a similar color palette, you kind of know which actions to run to in the beginning. All right, so and I use very specific actions that I like very much from a few different places, and the links will be in the comments. And if you are looking to purchase them and you want to go through my link, I would always appreciate that because I am an affiliate for them, but I only became an affiliate for them because I use their products, not vice versa. I didn't become an affiliate and then start using their products. These are products I've been using for years and years and years. Okay, so this takes away some of the blemishes. And then I'm going to go to the lasso tool, and I'm going to go to that bottom layer. And this is where the Gaussian blur comes into play. And then I make sure that I have a feathering on my lasso. And I'm going to lasso. This is where it kind of helps the skin filter, Gaussian blur. You'll see that the skin starts to, it kind of helps to blend the skin together. And this is a Gaussian blur, but it's not the same as if you were to just put a Gaussian blur on your image itself. Again, go to the Phlearn video to find out why. He explains it way better than I do. But this is the procedure that I take almost always. All right. And I do it a couple of times. Sometimes you need to. It smooths out the texture, but you don't want to lose your texture entirely. You still want them to look like they have skin and pores. So, you know, sometimes it is a bit of a give and take on how much you use and how many times you hit that Gaussian blur in certain spots. And then it's always good to peel back a little bit, and then I go to the frequency separation folder and I shift it off and on so I can really see if I did it too much, if I did it too little, off, on, off, on. Okay, so I like it. I don't think it's too much. I still see texture in her face. All right, I might even want to get rid of some more of the blemishes. Oops, I'm on the wrong layer again. There we go. And I could probably even do a little bit more. That's part of the process. She doesn't really have a lot of dark lines going on under here. If she did, I could also fill that in with some color as well. Oh, I think that I overdid it right there. You see how I totally lost the texture? I'm going to go Command Z, go backwards, go backwards, go backwards, because I definitely lost the texture there, and I don't want to lose the texture. I just want to get rid of some of these little lumps and bumps without making her look like a tiny doll. Okay. All right, so I think I'm okay with this. I don't think I overdid it too much. Turning it off. Again, turning it back on. Yeah, pretty happy with it. I'm just actually maybe shift the opacity down just slightly. And now I'm going to, I don't always do this, but I'm going to flatten the image. Okay, so I flatten it. I'm duplicating the layer. So I'm starting from this point. Now I have a bunch of actions that I really like to use, and I start off with them at this point, and I check and see how they work with the color tones. So actually, the first action I'm going to use a little bit of, I'm going to just do a little bit more face work for her. I'm going to go into my Greater Than Gatsby. I'm going to use my little lip gloss action here. Actually, let me see if I'm in the right one. I have a couple of Greater Than Gatsbys that I love, and a Jessica Drossin. These are the ones that I use all the time. Okay, so I'm going to use the base eye foundation. I like that. It just sharpens up the eye a little bit more. I always find now I'm bringing my brush to 50% opacity, and just sometimes you find that these actions will actually make the whites a little too white. So I like to then go back and forth, shut it off, shut it back on, and see if I need to reduce, because like her eyes whites are a little bit. I'm going to press X. I'm just going to paint off on her whites because I think that they were way too much. But now if you look up close, see how it sharpened it up even a little bit more. It has a nice selection here. To darken the rim, you can do some shape light, you can do some soft sharpen. If they have blue eyes, I also sometimes bring out the blue eyes by using some of these or just some other little techniques that are not necessarily. Oops, there we go. Let's see. Turn on. Yep, nice and sharp. Yes, her eyes look really good right now. And then I'm going to go to, I like the soft lip gloss. Okay. So then again, using my white brush, it's actually a little bit pink, a little too pink for me. Bring that down a little bit. Let's see. That one's a little, that's pretty good. I'll leave that. I might richen up the color later with her lips by burning them with the Dodge and Burn. That should bring the color a little bit darker. I'm also going to use a little bit of blush. And I'm very careful with this one because look at that, it can completely make them into clowns. I'm going to bring the opacity down to 10% to start with. Just a teeny little bit. Sometimes they even put it right on the lips too. Even though it's blush. It might be a little too much though, let's see. Yeah, it's actually a little too much. I'm going to bring the opacity down 20%. Let's see it on. Yeah, it's just really subtle. Really, really subtle. Yep, very subtle. Okay, so now I'm pretty happy with all of this. So I'm going to flatten everything again. Don't have to do that, but the next one that I'm going to use that I really like a lot from Greater Than Gatsby that works well with these tones is, this is in the Three Nails collection. And I believe that since they made this collection, which is an old one, because I've had this for about 8 years, they actually have they have their own Painterly collection. I've never used the Painterly collection, but when I read about it on the internet, they said that their whole collection came because this was such a popular section of the 3 nails. So I'm going to use this, and they do tell you to flatten your image beforehand. So I like this. It's a strange little thing. You have to, I guess I didn't really need to make a background copy, but I like to. So now, boom, right there. That's, very painterly. It's a little bit much for me though, so I'm going to reduce it, but I like it in the background a lot. I'm going to throw a mask on it. I'm going to use a black mask. I'm going to start at 40% opacity, and I'm going to wipe it off her face because I think it's a lot on her face, and make sure her skin tones match too. But I really like it. Now that's a very painterly looking. So here's the difference, okay? What is it made up of, this action? What do I think? I think there's a Gaussian blur inside of it, and there's some contrast and some saturation going on, and it just works nicely. So I'm going to start with that one. I also really like, sometimes I like it better than other times, from the same 3 nails collection. I like these Your New Aesthetics. They do bring a lot of blue in, so you do have to be careful, but I feel like they tone down. I think that works really nice. Again, you can use the layer mask to paint off if, let's say, there's too much purple in certain spots, and I'm going to go with a 70% opacity, so I'm going to paint off a lot of the purple here, but I do like that. It's really, and I'm going to paint it off her face and her hair and her hat. I'm actually going to go to 100% opacity there, and her stomach. I don't want her to look purple. I do like the blue tones though. I just don't want her to look blue, and I think in one of my images recently I didn't wipe her off of her enough. So that's really pretty. Without it, with it, you might have stopped right there. You might not have put this one in. It might not be your thing. I just like the way it kind of tones it down just a little bit. Sometimes I play with the second one over here. It's another Your New Aesthetic. I actually really like that too a lot. I'm going to turn off the first one and see how it looks. I think I like the second one better. Let's see how blue it made her. So I'm actually going to go to about 70% opacity and wipe it off of her hair and off of her jacket too. Although I kind of like it on her jacket. This is where this is really color toning, and this is really your personal preferences. It's what you like. Someone might say, oh, there's too much blue. There's too much purple. Well, if you like it, then it's not too much, right? It's your preference. This is where we get to be artists and make our own decisions. So, yeah, I mean, this is, I've so often come to this action. Might be a little purpley for me. Oops, I'm gonna go backwards. I so often come to this action and then turn that one off and turn this one on and then turn them both on, see what happens. It's really what you like. Do you want more purpley looks in the background? Is it too much for you? Is it not? Okay. Turn off the painterly, see how that affects everything. Switch the layers around, put the painterly on top, see how that changes things. You have to play around with these things. That's what I mean by actions or tools. And you have to learn to use your tools. Oh, I'm going to hang on for a second, pause this video for a moment. Okay, I'm back. So the one other action that I'm going to try out here is, I also really like Jessica Drossin's Illumination instant overlays, and my go-to often is Eden overlay. I like this one a lot, but sometimes it has a little too much light in it for me, and I will do something pretty cool with it when it's done. Okay, so I like this action a lot, but I find that this light on her face can be a little bit harsh. I could change the opacity down. I can also go into the layer mask with a black brush and wipe off. And only at 9% opacity, so that wasn't really doing much. Oops, if I wipe off too much though, now her skin tone really doesn't match the scene. So I'm gonna bring it back to, I want her skin tone to match the scene. So I'm gonna bring the color back in now. It might be a little too much on her stomach. So click it on. I've always loved this color toning. This is one of my favorite color toning tools. Another thing that you can, and I think it works very nicely in this image. I'm looking around at her skin tones to make sure I think that they look okay. And there is a lot of blue in this road now. So I'm going to just go back and check out the other ones, the other actions I threw in, and shut them on and off just to see if I like anything better without them now. And this is without the painterly. I still like the painterly. And I think I'm pretty happy with everything. So one other thing that you could do is you could throw a dodge and burn layer on. And actually I'm going to, I'm pretty happy with everything. So I'm going to highlight everything and I'm going to flatten my image. And I'm going to use a dodge and burn layer. Oops. This is an action that I created myself. This is an action that I made using curves layers. And basically it's just a curves layer with a black mask over it. One of the layers is a dodge layer. So when you use a white, you're going to paint off on the mask. I use a white brush. I'll start off maybe at a 40% opacity, and that's just going to add lightness to it. It's a curves layer, and the layer, which is kind of cool with it, is that it's, when I made this layer, I'm going to shut off the mask so you can see. Okay, you can see that it's just a curves layer that is much brighter and also set to luminosity. The burn layer, I'm going to shut off, disable the layer mask, is a dark layer also set to luminosity. Okay, so that it's only affecting the lights, the luminosity of the image and not the color itself. So I'm going to just bring my dodge and burn back, and this is how I could, oops, Command Z, I'm going to go back to dodging, which is bringing out some lightness to her. So maybe I want to dodge a little bit in here, but mostly I wanted to just kind of work on her face a little, which she really, really doesn't need much. I'm going to add a little bit of dodging to her, under her eyes. Oops, let's make this a little smaller. I think there's actually a little too much going on here. I'm going to go back a step. Add a little bit of luminosity. I'm just kind of adding the lightness where there already is lightness. All right, and a little bit over here. And then I'm going to go to my burn layer. I'm going to use it at start at 1%. And I'm going to burn in cheekbone area. I'm going to burn the lips a little bit, make them nice, a little bit dark. I'm going to go maybe to 30% now. And I'm going to burn the lips. I'm going to go to 60% for the lips now just to see. And I'm going to, again, maybe burn a little bit more at the cheeks. This is also a good way of making some eyeliner or making, whoops, it could be a little, I think that's a little much, but that was, I'm going to go back, step back. I think that's a little too much, but that's a way of bringing out. You can also paint in the brows, and I'm going to use the dodge. I'm going to burn her hat a little bit down. Bring out the color of the hat, adds a little saturation. Oops, that's a little bit much for me. Add a little bit of that. And oops, go to like 30%. And I'm going to just a little bit much again, backwards. I'm going to step back twice, go to 1%. I'm just going to dodge her clothes. I mean, I'm going to burn her clothes a little bit. Okay, bring down her jeans a little bit. And I'm going to step back to the dodge, and I'm going to add just a little bit of dodging, put a little bit of light here. And then I'm going to burn again. And I'm going to go back up. And I'm going to go back up and down. And if I'm going to show you, I turn off the dodge and burn, how it looks. And you may like it better. All right, but her face is actually definitely a little bit too much. I'm going to take the opacity down now on her face to a place that I like there. But it just brightened up her face a little bit. All right. So I'm liking all these colors. I like the color palette. I think her skin looks okay. Dodge and burn looks good. Maybe a little bit less than the dodge and burn. Sometimes I have to walk away. Can overdo this dodging and burning a little bit. I'm going to go File, Save, and bring it back into Lightroom. Do the final touches in Lightroom. So this is the before. Now it's coming back into Lightroom. And then I get to see it again. And basically, I think I'm just going to pull out the whites just a tiny bit. I always like to do that. Maybe even, sometimes I have to step away because my images are a little too dark. I tend to do that. And then I have to go back later and step away from them. So going back here, oops, it's another image. And I'm just going to do a tiny bit more noise reduction on the image. I don't want to overdo the noise reduction because I'm like plastic. And I like her. And I'm going to say export file and export. And that's it. So thanks for watching. That's pretty much my process.